Hi everyone, Brian Walker, CEO, founder of Retail Doctor Group. Future of Retail podcast. I always enjoy doing this work because it brings to our listeners new perspectives, new light on a changing world, currently and into the future. And I love this whole thinking around being able to see around corners. So I'm delighted to have with me today John Ball, who's the Managing Director of Global Consumer Solutions, or Customer Solutions, Australia and New Zealand. And I've had the pleasure of working with John and listening to him on a couple of other events. And John, welcome. Looking forward to your view of the future of retail.
Thank you so much. Great to be here and excited to have this conversation with you.
Thanks, John. Well, maybe just a little introduction about your good self, and we'll take it from there.
Look, great, certainly. Look, context, I've been in the tech space now since '85, so coming on 40 years, and it's been incredible to watch the changes and the evolution and how literally during this time, it's changed the way we go about our days and how we do things and what we do. And it's just been really amazing to be here and be in such a seat to watch. So I started off my journey as a software engineer back in the day and applied science, computing science. And it's been really interesting that in the applied mathematics components, when we're going all the linear algebra and all those things, seeing those same equations coming to life in AI and machine learning. And it's been really sort of fascinating to watch that whole journey through neural networks and what we were doing to where it is to now. So that's been really quite exciting. Look, on the personal side, I love to get out and do adventure travel, climb mountains, cycling, other things. And all this is a nice sort of tapestry in bringing it all together. But very excited to be here with you today and share some thoughts and some impressions on where we are and importantly, where we think things will be heading as well.
John, it's fascinating, isn't it? You know, we talk about the technology revolution and we look at it as though the next phase after the historic industrial revolutions, and even before that, the various changes of way. And, you know, the idea that along came electricity, along came motor cars, along came cloud computing, and so forth. Do you think history will look back at this period that we're in now as being the start, if you like, of the technology revolution?
You know, I actually do think so. And there's many reports that go and say exactly that this will be one of those major inflection points because the nature of AI and machine learning, they can very much find solutions now at an exponentially faster rate. And so we will see change and growth at levels that we've not actually experienced before. That will be quite transformative in industries. When we look back over the last, say, 40 years, each of the major changes, now whether that was the PC coming out, the internet, the mobile phone, businesses typically would take the next 1 to 5 years to adopt them. With AI, we're actually seeing that being a very, very smaller and tighter adoption curve, because if you don't, then you're going to be left behind. And so we're actually seeing that the necessity to make changes faster is much more pronounced because of the impact it's going to have for those businesses that do, and the advantage that it will give them, much more so than we've seen in previous evolutions of the technology.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think about change and the work that you're talking about, John, as being somewhat at two levels. At one level, it's very overt. We see the advent of AI, which has really been around since the 1950s in mapping and so forth. So we see the very overt manifestation of it. But we also see this, or rather don't see this, rather ubiquitous sense of technology and how much it permeates our everyday life without us actually even perhaps giving conscious space to it. And so, you know, if I think about that from a global perspective to start us at the bigger picture, you know, we're talking now about large language models or artificial intelligence starting to change the very nature of organizations. You know, I'll move this to retail organizations shortly. If we say that there are 7.8 billion people at the moment on the planet, that over the next 15 to 20 years, there'll be new jobs being created, reorganization of roles, Do you subscribe to this view that the workforce will change substantially as a consequence of AI and technology?
Yeah, look, I think that's going to be a byproduct of it, where there'll be different, you mentioned the Industrial Revolution and others. If you go back, it'll be a similar sort of process where there won't be individuals doing a certain type of job. Their jobs will morph and evolve. And we'll see the same thing with AI, where a lot of the work that people would have done, with computers and calculators and other things, will be taken over by the new tools, the advanced computing and AI, and then individuals will be able to do much more higher level workloads, which will be probably more interaction with customers, understanding their specific needs, things that computers can't do in the same way. So we'll see this same evolution, and fortunately for society, we've been through it many times in this iteration of change. I mean, if you were a blacksmith years ago and then we commercialized with automobiles, there was a need to change because the same number of jobs.
To become a mechanic in that example.
Correct. And so there'll be the same evolution of skills required. And I think the thing that will be required is an openness to continue to learn and to not be afraid of the new things that are coming through, but to be adaptive. Think about the new tools and how they can help us have better experiences for our customers as well.
There's a classic utopian dystopic perspective that's out there in the market that says, utopia says that AI and the growth of technology will fuel a more incisive and skillful economy and a much happier place for the world to be, because it'll create space for time for all sorts of pursuits, as you touch on. There's also a slightly dystopic view that talks about privacy and all those sort of aspects. Do you have a bit of a view as to where this is all pointed and the role of government, I guess, in regulating this?
Yeah, look, I think there's two things. I think it's certainly government has a role, business has a role as well. And setting up what the principles are for your organization around AI, what do you accept? And like Google has, and you can look at these, and we're happy to send this out as a follow-up, but what are the principles? And there's 7 principles that define our approach to AI. And certainly I'd recommend that everybody thinks about what is it for their organization. The government has a set of principles, and so that you can actually have a nice way of pointing to the principles that you stand behind. And yes. So whatever you are, a nice way of doing that, and so that you can actually say we adhere to this, or whatever they are that you feel is the right thing for your organization. Government absolutely has a role, and business has a role, and individuals can then understand how people are actually adopting and bringing these to life.
Occasionally, John, I get asked a question that's something similar to, well, I hear all this stuff when I'm running boards and businesses, say in retail, about AI. Then I also hear about the growth of analytics and data. Are the two woven together as such?
Yeah, you don't get one without the other. And so AI works on data. And so the better your data is, the better the AI will work. And so firstly, I mean, grounding is you want to get your first party data right. You want to understand how that all flows and bringing it into a space where it's all connected. And so the large language models can be trained. They can work over that whole corpus of data. It's not like you can say, okay, I'm going to start with AI. I don't really have a data resource. I don't really have these things, but I want to get AI going. It doesn't actually work that way. You need to foundationally have the data and the underpinning system structures right, and then the AI can really learn and train and actually do wonderful things on top.
So maybe I'll use that as a bit of a segue into retail in our chat today.
Sure.
It seems to me that the small to medium retailer with legacy networks, possibly some challenges around the quality of their their data sets, have some opportunities and challenges there for the boards to be thinking about of these respective companies. And then I look at the Amazonian Temu models of the world and think, well, they're already incredibly good data analytic businesses in their own right. Is there a disparity coming?
Look, in this world, more is better. So more data, more insights, more things to actually train models on is definitely better. So in that way, you can say, look, you're bigger and you have all this stuff, definitely better. But that being said, a smaller organization can have really rich insights that are very tailored to their customer segment that they can actually work against. So in some ways, there's actually a lot of power to actually have those pieces really tuned and trained for the niche, the customers that they're going after. So whilst, yes, bigger is out there and more is better, there is a lot of power in actually having the model set up and trained on your own data that can actually make it really powerful and impactful for organizations as well.
And so, John, if we start to take a window into the next period for retailers and for consumers, how do you see consumers going forward benefiting from, well, frankly, data and analytics, personalization, subscription?
You touched on, I think the keyword, for me, one of the keywords there is personalization. And I think what consumers want, and being a consumer, is that they want the retailer to know them. They don't want to have to go in and rekey a lot of data, or every time come and actually have that whole process of them getting to know you. You know, where the package is, where's this, where's that, you know, rekeying credit card details. This notion of reducing the friction points from discovery to purchase, or from I've got an issue, getting it solved. What happens with the ability for data and AI is that the more data, the AI can really help to make that a much simpler process. Now, whether that's in customer support, the language models can be trained to interact and know you and be able to surface, you know, where is your product? Where is this? Where is that? Oh, this is out of stock. Those things can happen without having to have a human in the middle, in the mix of that. So all of a sudden, it can become much more efficient. So this, I think where things are heading is consumers will want more personalization, simpler, faster transactions. You mentioned, you know, Amazon and some of our larger retail customers. They do that well. They have lots of data. They personalize the experience with their website, with their apps and all those things. And I think the reality is consumers get used to that and they want a similar experience when they go to other retail customers. So I think more the opportunity is how do we learn from what, you know, some of the market leaders are doing? And in some ways, how do you learn on that and scale from that and give consumers what they need? Because part of it is the profile of consumers is changing. The younger consumers who were going through, you know, university, college 2 or 3 years ago, they're now out and they're actually spending. They've always grown up with a device in their hand. They're very, very, you know, web savvy, app savvy, and they have high expectations on personalization and the experience they want from a retailer. Now, the retailers are the consumers on the other end of the spectrum. Now they're getting in there, you know, the 70s, 80s, 90s, the more they're actually spending less and less. And so it's how do you make sure, as you think about the profile of your consumer, how do you adapt your ways of working with them and route to market to make sure you're giving them what they expect and need to come back and to be sticky with you?
And the topic, yes, and the topic of personalization is so interesting. And I look at studies that talk about, for example, 60% of all grocery purchases for consumers are habitual purchases. Now we start to get some really interesting commentary around this topic of the finite nature of personalization. In other words, in 10, 15 years' time, John, if all retailers have got very sophisticated AI machinery, for example, and they're able to provide me with subscriptions, robotics to go and collect product, whatever else, that will just become the norm, I guess. And
yeah, well, it'll become the new norm, and then it will continue to build on that base.
Yes.
And it'll continue to evolve and change and get more personalized and more, you know, reach into what customers want. Because I think the reality is we have less and less time all the time, and so we're always thinking, how do I, you know, do this more efficiently? How does the retail, as you mentioned, 60% plus. And so I think there's going to be more and more people actually, wow, this provider knows me They know that I always buy these same things, and they're making it really easy for me. Click,
Yes.
click, I'm in, I'm out, and it's going to be at my house in a couple of days.
And
So
I
that's
suspect that, yes.
very,
And I suspect the subtlety of this as well is that the initiation of the transaction won't be initiated by the customer. It'll be initiated by effectively the provider who has such in-depth knowledge.
correct. They know your consumption patterns. They know how often, and they'll send you out and say, hey, normally you'd be consuming this and this. We're a week out. Would you like to hit go? We'll get this for you. And so this whole way of preempting, getting to know you and making things simpler. So I think we'll see more and more of that, but all being driven by data and AI and the ability to personalize richly and to save people time and make it a richer experience for them as they come through.
Did I tell you that I was playing with some of these, I think they're first generation Meta glasses that, you take your photos from, and basically it's your phone, well, much of the attributes of your handset in your glasses, and then into your clothing. And there I'm imagining in time to come, people walking out into the street, and there'll be so many sensors and beacons and digital touch points that the whole world, if they allow it, will just be emblazoned with signals.
Look, I think it's absolutely the case. You could, again, this is just pushing that to the next level. You could see that your bathroom in your house has a series of sensors that could almost give you a health check every time you walk in there.
Yes,
The toilet is set up with X, this is set up with Y, and the output of brushing your teeth tells you this and this. And so all of a sudden, to your point, is there's all these ways of not just for, like today we have our watches that measure certain things, but then we'll have a whole range of other devices, and obviously with the right sort of permissions and privacy, could be doing all sorts of things for us, one from a consumption perspective, but also from a diagnosing and health and well-being perspective as well. I mean, there's so much data in human waste that you can imagine there's a world where you set up sensors and do these things, or in the scales you have in your house, or just, it's almost limitless in regards to where the monitoring and use of data and insights could go as well.
And so by this stage, of course, John, and maybe you could help me understand this, I presume we'll be in 6G and maybe 7G, and, will be really powerful.
Look, part of that is what we've seen certainly from the advent of mobile phones coming out, and every time it was 3, then it was 4, and 5's out now, and it's richer, faster communications, and 6 is still a ways off. But when you look at what 6G is promising, potentially terabytes of data, and really set up to enable, AI, and where should the computing take place? This notion of edge computing, should it be on the device, back at the server, and a whole range of smarts for what you're actually saying here, this notion of the IoT, the Internet of Things, where it can actually help decipher where the best, most efficient way of processing is. Also, enabling that streaming of video efficiently, because the bandwidth would actually be there to make that happen as well. Now, lots of applications into retail, whether that's security, replenishing shelves, used by dates, just a list of things where that could all come to life quite meaningfully. But the reality is that the pace of change is not going to stop. And so the large telecommunication companies, they're all working on these. You can go and read the papers of what 6G will be, that's out there. And so it's continuing to evolve at quite a rapid rate, which is really very exciting as well.
And will we see the metaverse and mixed realities re-enter the orbit, become more of an everyday event?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Look, to be honest, I don't know. For me, the jury's still out on that one. I think I prefer the physical world rather than a metaverse. And so this notion of popping on glasses and being in this virtual world and buying and trading was never something that I connected that tightly with. Now, others may, but for me, not so much. But I'm actually seeing that all this new tech, whether it's 6G, AI, humanoids, and the rest, will really augment the physical world that we're in and provide richer experience to help us be more efficient and bring things to life at scale.
I liked your earlier comment about the generational change, John. I've got a feeling my children will be very happy with the metaverse. I'm very much in the same camp as yourself. so I suspect there's a generational play.
Absolutely.
But of course, they'll also be enriched with robotics and humanoids, and so maybe touch
interesting at the moment. Even like in my home now, I have one of those 𝗙𝗂𝘁𝗂𝗏 robot, vacuum and mop that does the floor. It's amazing. It trains itself. It comes on at night, does the whole place, goes back away. Like, imagine 4 or 5 years ago thinking that would even be possible. I have a robot now that actually goes and cleans the windows, and it's actually pretty good as well. But this is the start of the journey. It's only going to get better. They're all using AI and data to do their work. But if you actually have a look at some of the reports that Elon Musk has put out over the last few weeks and others, the rapid developments in humanoids, where they're taking all of the, it was actually interesting. He said, look, all the work they've done with the Tesla car and the sensors and the ability for it to be autonomous is pretty much what the humanoids are, but they can walk and they've got arms, because they have all the sensors and all this ability to actually work and function and bring it to life is amazing. One of the statements that he made that sort of stayed in my mind, just the size and scale of what's going to happen with this, is that, his business, his Tesla SpaceX business, is orders of magnitude about 800 billion, close to $1 trillion. He predicts that the humanoid business for him has the potential of being 25 trillion. And he's seeing use cases clearly. He's introducing them already, these Optimus 3 robots on his production line for Tesla, so they're coming in, lowering costs of production. Amazon is using them now in their centers. They're being heavily engaged and built in China. And so we will see this will actually have an impact. And he's talking about, a humanoid in the home to care for people, to do the vacuuming, to make the meals, to do the ironing, to do all these tasks that if you're older and you can do it yourself, can you imagine the potential of having, a robot to do that? The price points he's talking about is somewhere between 10 and 20,000 to have these machines coming into your home. As a child, I loved the Jetsons, and they had a robot, Rosie, that would do the work. And it's like, it was so far out there that could ever be a reality. But now when you actually see what these things are capable of, it feels like, 3, 4, 5 years away, we can actually see it actually being a reality. And it obviously has implications, whether it's in the home, whether it's in the store, packing orders, whether it's all different types of workloads, you'll be able to train these humanoids to go and do, which I think is really quite fascinating.
I can remember the Jetsons myself, and I can remember the autonomous vehicle that would zip around and take them around this sort of tubular highway, and that's fast appearing too.
It is. Now there's actually a bunch of companies in Australia as well, around the world, that are actually making the cars, the flying cars. And so now you'll actually see that that's going to be a reality in a very short period of time. You'll be able to get a flying car to take you around, which is amazing. Likewise, drone deliveries. You think ordering something and having it at your house in 10 minutes, the coffee's still piping hot, the burrito's still steaming. And again, years ago, you just think, no way. Data and AI has made this possible. It's just incredible. And the machine, there's no one flying the drones anymore. The machine, the computers, do all of that workload. The order's placed, they know the address, they know the pinpoint location, the drone gets packed, or the food gets packed, it gets sent, and everything else is automated. And so it's really quite an interesting evolution of many different vectors to see how this is coming to life.
And we used to talk a couple of years ago, John, about the Internet of all things, and your coffee machine example got me thinking about that, talking to the fridge to make sure that the milk's the right temperature while it operates the garage door for your, possibly the garage door, though you'll probably have an autonomous vehicle. This is all part of the 5G, 6G wave, I take it, this sort of technology.
Yeah, look, just the continual evolution of more connections, more data being shared, so that everything has a way of connecting and sharing and working together. Now, whether that's what's in your fridge, whether that's the garage, whether it's the blinds in the house, the thermostat running the heater and the air conditioning, all have a way of connecting and sharing to bring those pieces to life, which is pretty exciting as well.
It is. And so you're a retailer as we start to wrap this session up, which has been really fantastic. You're a retailer, you've got legacy network system, you're thinking about the future generation of your business, heavily physical retail centered, and yet increasingly we're developing an omnipotent, time poor, technology dependent environment at some level.
Yep, definitely.
And so there's adaptation all the way through here, isn't there? So
correct.
I start to wonder, for example, what it means to the retail shop that we know today. Already we're starting to see some early adaptation, less stock, more experience, more integrated, part of what we're calling the retail ecosystem. But it's really just the start of the journey, isn't it? And it must be about this agility and mobility of brand to resonate through all these touch points.
Very much so. And I think part of it is really anchoring what does the customer want? What's the experience they want? Do they want to come in and actually touch and feel and see and try something on? And they will. I don't think that will actually go away. Or do they want it something they always buy? They just want to go click, click and have it sent to their home. And so I think it's this notion of understanding the customer, what they want, and providing both. And it's not saying one's good, one's bad. It's just what the consumer wants, and then using the data from one side to enrich the other and vice versa. And so that you can actually really have this adaptive environment to make the experience richer. And I think the retailers who do that well, that actually have both. And it's interesting, more and more we're seeing purely online plays having a physical presence, and obviously people that have a physical presence having an online play, because at the end of the day, it's the consumer that decides. And if they're not coming and buying from a pure play retail because they want to go and touch and feel, then you'll actually see there'll be some morphing in the space as well. And I think, look, the thing that governs all of it is what your customers want. What do they want to have the best experience to help them transact efficiently, whether it's in-store, online, and really making sure that pure omni-channel experience that brings those pieces together is really the true power.
Well, John, I was just thinking as you were saying that about the physical store and in wrapping up this session, I'm just imagining you walking into one of your local camping stores and being able to be go into some virtual space, and suddenly it's 5 a.m. on the peaks of Kilimanjaro and you're looking at the sunrise. And there will be the integrated retail experience of the future, I suspect.
Yeah, that's interesting. Having been on the peak of Kilimanjaro and had that experience, look, it would be very interesting to say, hey, I've forgotten something, get a drone to drop something up here for me. That would be incredible. I want a hot cup of tea right now, whatever we want, or whatever food type, or piece of clothing lost or forgotten. But I think it's this adaptive nature of giving customers when they want it, what they want, at time and place. And the notion, look, the thing I'll sort of close with is that the world continues to change. As we've learned from the Industrial Revolution and all the way through, is that those people, we saw what happened to the Luddites, and they didn't win that battle. And the same is true now, which is change is coming. It's not stopping. Data, AI, more personalization for consumers is where the world's going. And so the opportunity is to say, okay, this is what's happening. How do I embrace it? What do I do today to start? What does that look like? And so in doing that, it will actually help you future-proof your business for tomorrow. If the decision you take is, hey, I'm going to do nothing, and I've really enjoyed what my business has been for the last 30 years, and I'm sure things will be okay. That's not a formula for success into the future, and you won't be okay. And so I think, and then last part I'll say is, you may think, well, this is too scary. Look for a partner that's already done these things in your space who can help you on this journey. You don't need to learn it all yourself. There's many people who are capable to come in and say, hey, the first step is this. It's not a massive step and it won't cost you a lot, but why don't we get started on this together? And so I think that's the thing that will really help define success and help you continue to evolve and develop in the area as well.
Well, John, it's a topic that fascinates me. I agree entirely with your commentary and your sentiment. The interesting thing around customer experience is that part of the journey and the vision is painting out an experience for a customer who doesn't realize it yet, but will do. John Ball, Managing Director of Google Customer Solutions, Australia and New Zealand. Delighted to have you on the Future of Retail podcast with Brian Walker and team at Retail Doctor Group. And John, personal invitation to extend this to another session. It's been terrific.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Always happy to chat. Lovely to see you again, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thanks again, John.